Now, ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula is addressing the ANC-KZN workshop on the establishment of a state-owned bank. The robust discussions will be led by the captains of industry, key stakeholders in the financial sector, academics and ANC leadership at various levels. Let's, of course, step in and find out what's happening there.
One country is wrong and all of that. We equally embrace the United Nations Charter. And that is why we're equally vocal about the territorial integrity. And at the same time, we talk about sovereignty of nation state in this particular regard. So territorial integrity in the context of what is going on means many things to many people, and in particular to Russia and to Ukraine and NATO. So proxy war means you are fighting a war on behalf of others, which is what we are not about. And now we are being attacked that we give arms which we did not give. And then some among us then say, no, you are going to compromise us in terms of global trade and trade between wealthiest nation and what we seek to benefit as a nation. We have taken steps to engage our trading partners in terms of what and where do we stand. But we have set ourselves, we will not be bullied. Because bullying to us means imperialism or neo-colonialism. And that is what we are against as the African National Congress. And the steps we have taken to engage others and to participate in this particular situation of war in the Ukraine, it's not only us. We only bring even those who have taken a clear stand. And in terms of the delegation, it's an African peace mission. You don't achieve all the results in one day. It takes time. And then I see people who are not informed of what is happening in the world say, why do you go to Ukraine? Why do you bother about that? But the cost of living here in South Africa, you are affected and you don't know why you are affected. I've never seen such ignorance in the age of time we are living in. And the liberation movement is important, led by the African National Congress, to be at the helm of engaging. We have allowed, comrades, the space of engagement and in the generation of ideas to others. We have abandoned our role. We don't debate and inform ourselves and agree to disagree about what is happening in Ukraine. We have allowed the reactionaries, fascists and forces of backwardness to dominate the space. And then we are in the receiving end. We don't articulate our view and put it across in terms of what we believe and what we stand for. We have allowed Twitter to define what is political debates in less than 140 characters, to tell us how we must think, swearing at each other. No more dialogue. The national debate has actually died. Now the ANC must step up in this particular regard. I give that prelude because it is important to this discussion, that of the state bank, that the ANC have taken a resolution about, and that the province of KwaZulu-Natal take this particular initiative to basically contribute in terms of shaping the amendment of post-bank bill and basically give its own thoughts. So when we're in China, what is important about China is that they decided in 1978 that they're going to build a new city in Shenzhen. And then they've developed different theories, including fighting abject poverty. When we arrive in China now, they tell us that the past 10 years is over and we see the results of our program in fighting abject poverty. And then Xi Jinping have brought to realization the idea which was conceptualized in 1978 by Deng Xiaoping about the development and the modernization of China. And it only became a realized idea after 40 years. And President Ramaphosa talks about it in Parliament and say, reimagine. Because Deng Xiaoping was the architecture of China's modernization program, which Xi Jinping is implementing. It's a relay. All Chinese leaders which have come successively have implemented this idea. It doesn't mean that when another one comes in, thinks that is more clever than the other one, they continue with the idea. To this particular day, this is actually realizable after 40 years of this idea. President Ramaphosa says in South Africa, reimagine a South Africa where a train can start from Makado and come through Johannesburg to Durban and to Cape Town, speed rail. And then they say, no, he's drunk. And then he says, let's talk about smart cities, which is what China has implemented. And he says, this is not my idea. I've actually learned about it from the Chinese model, and which is basically been implemented now. Now, China is actually advancing in this particular regard in terms of the ideas, which architectures of these ideas of modernizations have long passed on, but the relay is actually continuing. So what we started with the RDP cannot collapse in our hands in 2023. What I'm trying to say is that none of us today can explain where is NDP. And we're so excited about it. National Development Plan. By 2030, we'll have half poverty by so and so. But we are not articulating that idea. The best model we learn from China is that an idea does not die with the change of leadership. It continues and get to be implemented. And that is what is important. So if we can keep the relay and ensure that State Bank was conceptualized just 10 years ago, we are implementing it now. It's an idea that must not die in our hands. So me and Mtolo were there, and so we will give you a good report. Now, this tour will be different from many other tours where everybody goes, learn, and come back and brag about knowledge. We're going to implement the good experiences that have come. We'll place it before the National Executive Committee. It is not just a tour about economy, it is a tour also about party building and construction. There are things that Chinese can do that we cannot do, but there are things that we can learn from the Chinese that all of us can do. And one of the fundamentals when we talk about the State Bank is the uncompromising, unapologetic role of the interventionist role of the state. And that is what is fundamental. That if they say in China, we give you money to build SOEs and then we monitor them, you go off the rails, you are gone. We can't afford to have a prasa here that just goes off the rail and therefore you don't do anything. That is why we had to deal with somebody there, if you quote me something else. I realized in a year's time, Lomdwanaga season, even those are new qualification is in Zema, I found qualification in Zemaland. We have only trains here, she has builder and everything. We've got positive reports. So we need that kind of decisiveness. So that was the prelude, comrades. We would like to thank and appreciate the initiative by the leadership of KZN to rally stakeholders to have a say and participate in the implementation of ANC resolutions. This is your organization. You should participate in its processes, activities, and events. And this is the basis for which we make the assertion, ANC lives, ANC leads. Today, the subject of policy discussion is the creation of a state bank. The idea of a state bank emerged in our policy processes as an intervention aimed at progressively affecting the structure and depth of the South African financial system. And by the way, we need to extend to say the architecture of this particular idea is the South African Communist Party. If you remember, their campaign of fighting diversification, intervention in terms of the financial sector, led by the Communist Party, when Comrade Blade Nzimande took over from Upu Charles. And then they conceptualized the idea Blade Nzimande implemented. Something good from the Communist Party. Because this idea came from the Communist Party in South Africa. In this regard, comrades, the 55th National Conference further resolved, among others, that solutions are needed to address the unjust lack of access to capital, particularly by SMMEs, women and youth-owned enterprises. The transformation of the financial sector should include gender and race of the ownership of financial institutions, and must also include the transformative and diverse allocation of capital from banks along race, gender, and geospatial lines. Employment equity targets need to be achieved in this sector at all levels. Realizing the importance of institutional investors in the allocation of capital, institutional investors such as the PIC must take on a more activist shareholder role in ensuring transformation in the financial sector. Government should move with speed in implementing the resolution on the state bank, including finding a way to capitalize the bank. Close quote. That is our resolution. Our strategic perspective, comrades, is that the overall project of transformation, the country rests in building of a capable state that have leverage in key economic sectors. Accordingly, the financial services sector is one such vital economic lever that requires strategic state attention. And perhaps an observation by Financial Sector Study 2022 makes the following assertion, I quote, "Despite the increase in new entrants in the banking sector, the market remains highly concentrated, with the largest banks holding over 85% of the industry deposits in 2020. The banking landscape is changing as banks face increasing competition from newly established banks, technology-enabled startups, and a growing number of retailers offering financial services, including credit products. Three newcomers over the last 4 years, namely Timey Bank, Discovery Bank, and Bank Zero, have played a significant role in reducing banking fees, as well as introducing different distribution models, for example, leveraging retail stores and launching innovative value propositions for customers, close quote. However, the same comrades Financial Sector Study 2022 further observed that, I quote, "Coverage remains an issue in the retirement industry, given that only approximately 7 to 10 million individuals have retirement savings products out of an employment labor force of about 15 million. In the public sector, 92% of workers have a retirement product, whereas less than 50% have a retirement product in the private sector. Coverage is particularly low for individuals earning a monthly income of less than 14,000 ZAR, close quote. We strive for the creation of an overall financial system with savings. Since we grow up and we were told that the most important contribution we need to make is savings. Credit, capital, and bond markets that effectively facilitate the creation of a truly non-racial, non-sexist, and prosperous South Africa. This means that we need to build a financial system that promotes expanded access to economic and social assets for the vast majority of the South African people. We are all aware that among the major challenges with the South African financial sector currently is limited to access to finance to the broad masses of the people, particularly for black-owned businesses, especially emergent small, medium, macro enterprises. In response to this problem, comrades, the 55th National Conference noted that the financial services sector has an important role to play in creating and ensuring deep, inclusive, functional and efficient financial markets in the South African economy. Conference agreed that government should move with speed in implementing the resolution on establishing a state bank, including finding ways to capitalize the bank as one strategic step towards deepening levels of access to financial markets for the majority of our people. In this context, this workshop is critical in the discourse of how best should we go about in bringing this state bank to life. We therefore look forward to your discussions and expect your contribution to put on the table clear proposals to move the process of establishing this state bank with much needed speed. Comrades, our theory of national democratic revolution and the financial markets, as earlier stated, the strategic thrust of our national democratic revolution is the transformation of South Africa into a non-racial, non-sexist, democratic and prosperous society. This means that we aim to systematically undermine the legacy of colonialism and apartheid, especially its economic architecture that reproduces structural racism and sexism. Our focus, comrades, is to transform the lives of our people with a bias towards historically marginalized communities. This includes especially communities in designated townships, hostels, rural areas. A principal task the developmental state we are constructing is to respond to these challenges faced by people in these spatial centers and provide them with pathways towards economic emancipation. In the context of the financial services sector, the mainstream financial institutions have historically neglected and simply discriminated against those who live in townships, hostels, and rural areas. Hence the campaign by the South African Communist Party. They continue to be denied equitable access to financial services. Istokvel, you know. It's a very important financial institution, Istokvel, including lack of access to funding for their businesses, with preference given to their affluent counterparts in suburbs and towns. The requirements to access funding are designed to make it difficult to qualify and to exclude them. This is because in the current framework of the financial services market, access to funding is primarily predicated on one's ability to provide tradable assets that can serve as leverage. This usually involves property or other financial assets that can be transformed into cash by the banks in case the person defaults on a given loan. Essentially, comrades, access to these financial opportunities is viable only to those with historically accumulated tradable assets. In the context of South Africa's history of asset accumulation, the result is that only people in historically metropolitan and urban special centers can qualify. At a macro level, this disproportionately means white South Africans. The result of this is that regardless of how brilliant, innovative and enterprising a person from the historically oppressed national and gender groups, they have limited chances for equitable access to capital markets to finance their ideas and commercialize them. This is because without historically accumulated assets as leverage, their risk profile is higher and therefore renders them unworthy of investment for the bank. So hlala singabantu ubani la loan shark. Yeah. Nephayana unikezela nge-bank card yakho, ne-passport, and everything else. So every time ufuna ukhipha imali, end of the month funeka uyoshona lapha, and then get your card to withdraw. So you are a loan shark person. The South African Post Bank Limited Amendment Bill is a crucial piece in the puzzle towards economic transformation of our country. We are convinced that our people will benefit from the enactment of this bill. At the same time, it is vital to take cognizance of the fact that the Post Bank is not been established from scratch as a bank, but it has been existing a division within South African Post Office from the onset, and was later incorporated as a 100% subsidiary of South African Post Office. Post Bank has been relying on South African Post Office as the parent company to provide services. As a parent company, South African Post Office has been responsible for its establishment. The complete removal from South African Post Office, which is required to give effect to the bank controlling company structure in line with the banking license applications requirements. The incorporation of the Post Bank Company as a separate legal entity has been critical to enable the actual application to the South African Reserve Bank for a full banking license in terms of the Banks Act. The banking license application process has been prolonged in nature with rigorous and stringent outline administrative, compliance and regulatory requirements from South African Reserve Bank that had to be complied with throughout. The workshop, therefore, will further update the stakeholders on the final steps to be taken and timeframes towards enactment of this bill. We wish you, comrades, a productive workshop which will assist in taking the process of transforming our society. In conclusion, the ANC is the principal architect. The ANC is the principal architect. We come from China, you hear, we talk architect. Yeah, very important. ANC is the principal architect. It's us who started this thing. And we are intervening decisively. And therefore, as the principal architect of the transformative constitutional democratic order in our country, a democracy with South African characteristics, wherein the state is accountable and capable of improving the quality of life of all citizens. This bill is the right step in the economic transformation process. So I talk about South African characteristics, and the Chinese talk about socialism with Chinese characteristics. So you see there is two things there that go hand in hand. Therefore, this bill is the right step in the economic transformation process. It's very important. So don't think that you are doing a half-baked work here. This work is very important. It's going to have an impact in the lives of our people in the longer term in a big way. This is now what you call transformation. And that is why I want to applaud you, comrades, for this important work that we are starting here today. And I think all other provinces need to take keen interest in the pieces of legislation like this one. The 55th National Congress.
All right, we come out of that now. That's ANC General Secretary Fikile Mbalula just speaking at the workshop on the establishment of a state-owned bank, also going at length to also say that government should really move swiftly on its resolutions to power up this state-owned bank, and of course also saying that financial services sector also has a role to play.